Could be better. Rick Tura. Hi, this is Julie, and welcome back to the Sauna Trail podcast. Join us in our adventures as we share the story of how our family discovered the world of Finnish sauna. You might be wondering, why would anyone do a podcast dedicated to something as commonplace as sauna? It's like doing a podcast about nickels, toothpaste, or mailboxes. Well, if you stick around, you might find out that there's more to sauna than you realized. In last week's episode, we dove deep into the world of sauna literature. And 2 weeks ago, we mentioned reaching out to the broader sauna community as we learned about sauna and specifically finding David Salmelas' books. Today's episode connects both of those. His contact information was in one of the books, so Christopher reached out to him. Contrary to the stereotype of very reserved and insular Finns, David was super friendly. He answered tons of Christopher's questions and even agreed to let our family come visit him in person. So today, we have a real treat. We are joined by David and his wife, Annie, to talk about their Finnish heritage, what sauna meant to them growing up, some of their favorite sauna memories, and what some of their sauna practices are. David did warn us that he'll probably do most of the talking, but Annie, feel free to jump in and make any corrections that David needs to be corrected on. One disclaimer to this episode: we are recording this after we have taken sauna and then filled our bellies with warm Cambodian chicken lime soup. So if we're talking a little slower or sounding a little more relaxed than normal, that's why. So what did everybody think of the soup tonight?
Delicious.
Delicious.
Spicy. And delicious. Except, of course, when I had to blow my nose and wipe my brow.
David got a red chili that was a little spicier than the rest of us, I think. Do you guys just want to just tell a little bit of your background, like that you grew up Finnish? What are you comfortable with?
I can do that.
Okay.
So, I was born to Finnish American parents, and my grandparents were Finnish Americans. We called ourselves Finlanders oftentimes. My great-grandparents were Finnish. It goes back so far, it's really kind of boring. 80% of my first words as a spoken child were in Finnish. And then because we lived in America and I was American and my mom and dad spoke English, I kind of forgot most of them. But we always went sauna. I didn't even think about it. It was a way to just something to do. We'd go to sauna as a family, and then when we got a little older, we'd go with our cousins and males and females sauning separately. And that's how you got clean. You just didn't even think about it. And I don't often think about it all the time. But then as I got older, I thought, oh no, I don't think everybody goes to the sauna.
Yeah.
And I didn't go to kindergarten. So then I started first grade. And I remember the bus driver asked me on the first day of school, oh, what's your name? I said, David. And he said, no, your last name, Salmela. He said, how do you spell that? I said, David. And he said, no, your last name. I just turned around and I went back home. So then the next day, I finally got calmed down, I think, and they sent me to school. My dad was a teacher in the school, so I had to go, but I wasn't his student. Then the teacher was asking everybody what they had for breakfast. It was like cornflakes, life, oatmeal. And they got to me and I said, purua, which is hot cereal. And the teacher said, what? And I said, purua. And the teacher said, what? And I said, purua. And I left the room. It was there then on finally I was thinking, oh, maybe the whole world is not Finnish or Finnish American.
Interesting.
And then somewhere, as time went on, then I realized, oh, people don't go to the sauna.
And they don't even say it like sauna.
No. That used to bother me a lot more. But now it just says, oh, I see you pronounce it the America English way. I mean, it's like, whatever. It doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. I think we always say that the practice of sauna is more important than how you say it.
Yeah.
So growing up, sauna was so normal. But what were kind of your practices? Like what did you do? So as Christopher and I, we didn't grow up with it,
Right.
So it's also new to us, and it is, I think, kind of like asking somebody like, well, how do you take a shower? So I know it's kind of a hard thing sometimes to articulate, but like, what were some of the things what did it look like?
Oh, well, that for one, it was a nice break to boredom because there wasn't really too much television in rural America. And if there was, it was one channel and it was really boring and it was usually fuzzy. Then visiting with old people, even if they're relatives, that's fairly boring as well. So it's like, oh, we get to go sauna. And we'd go with our cousins or, sometimes our uncles. And in the sauna, everything was a little different because, for one, you don't have any clothes on. So you don't worry about things. And some inhibitions go away with that because you're all sitting there naked and you're laughing and talking, or sometimes you're quiet and you don't have to be visiting in the house. You can horse around a little bit. And then when you're all done with everything, it's clean. So sometimes there was switches to switch yourself with the skin, and historically you'd use birch leaves because they're like an astringent, so it would act like soap when your pores are all open. You could just switch yourself gently. But I've used some plastic ones. Well, some's made out of rubber inner tube diapers. That was really bad. Other kind of branches, cedar branches, pine branches, they're okay, except that the needles are poking. Then you would hurt your arms, and that's no fun. But they smell good. So I don't know. You just first you sauna for a while, then when you get too hot, you go out, sit around, or splash some water on you, or go down on the floor where it's cooler. And then you might go back in and go back out, or go back in, or just, oh, I'm so sick of this, I'm going out. Or if some really hot people are really pouring the water on the rocks, you're like, I'm out of here. Except then you get a little stubborn and say, oh, I can last a little longer. And then after you're all done, you soap up and rinse off and cool down and go in for some pie or cookies or coffee or juice or something. That's it. Nothing to it.
So it was very much like a social gathering.
Yeah.
How often would that happen?
Well, sometimes once a week. Sometimes we'd visit 2 nights a week. Weekends, sometimes you'd go a couple times, usually once a day. If you stayed longer at the cabin, you could maybe go in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember going with my grandma and my mother, and yeah, it just seemed like a normal part of life.
I think that something that I have really loved about sauna has been the time that I get to spend with my daughters and my mom. So my mom, I've introduced to sauna. She's also Cambodian, but she loves sauna. So she has one at her house. It's an electric outdoor one. And I think one thing that I found in the sauna is that we talk about things that we never really talked about. And, I'm in my 40s, and so it's only been the last few years that I feel like in the sauna, there's just something about the environment and sitting there that conversation goes so much deeper and more beautifully than outside of the sauna.
You have it perfectly said. That's how it works.
Yeah.
I loved going to the sauna with my uncles.
Yeah.
And I didn't do so much with my grandfathers because they were older. But my uncles and my cousins, and you get to know everybody. And now as I'm older, my friends,
Yeah.
I can go to sauna with my friends. I went to sauna with your husband in that 2-story bungalow. I didn't even know what I was doing. It was wonderful. Yeah. What's there to do? Sweat and talk, or I'll sweat and be quiet. It doesn't matter that much.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And both are wonderful.
Yeah. Wonderful.
I think one time I was sauning with another friend, and we had only met. It was the first time we had met was at the sauna. I had invited her over, and she said, "I'm telling you things I would never tell a complete stranger." She goes, "I don't know what's happening to me." There's something in the vulnerability of that experience. No clothes or very little clothes. Like there's no covering, and you've got nothing to hide behind.
No. And now I know lots of Finnish business people have their meetings in the sauna because nobody's wearing a fancy gold watch or a glitzy ring or the best suit that you could possibly buy. You're all stripped down to your bare essence.
Right.
And it's hard to have any kind of posturing in the sauna. Oh, it can still be done, but it's a little bit more difficult.
Well, and it's really hard to look cool and put together when it's like 200 degrees and somebody just threw water on the rocks and you're like, my ears are stinging. And so,
Yeah. And I'm on that Dunlap disease diet, my belly Dunlapped over my belt. Hard to be posturing
Right.
with that kind of stuff
exactly,
going on.
exactly. We've been reading a lot about in the sauna books. The last episode we talked about sauna books, and I read a lot about women who grew up as a girl in the sauna with their aunts, their moms, and no one was concerned about this fat roll or these stretch marks or what I look like. They were just there together, and there was none of that. And so to kind of grow up seeing all different types of body types, and like that's normal. Like we're not naked because we're models, you know. This is just bathing, and this is part of life, and we all look different. So I think that's a beautiful part of it too, is you have to be comfortable to a certain extent in your own skin. And I think that's sometimes hard for us to do in our society when we're supposed to look a certain way.
Yeah, there's definitely a different mindset in the Finnish practice than the Americans have. Like, in fact, we took sauna today. I took sauna with David, and we're in town, and yet he's still going to sauna naked, which is...
I was being modest.
Yeah, we had towels when we went outside.
Yes.
But there's definitely like just more of a comfort there and kind of like a freedom, but it's like a less uptightness. Americans are pretty uptight about nakedness.
Well, I'm generally uptight about nakedness too, but not in the sauna. I don't know why. It's because how I grew up. Otherwise, I'm very modest.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like you kind of, is it like a shower kind of?
No. Yes. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yes. But no, because I wouldn't be shy doing it with other men.
Right.
That's true. You're not showering. Yeah.
And then
Right?
I think in
Right.
America,
So-
we just don't even have that category of experience. You know,
Right.
like
Yeah, in America we do,
communal bathing is
but
not
in
really
Finnish America and in other parts of America.
right.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
I mean, because America is made up of everything we can almost imagine.
That's true.
That is true. That is true.
But the vast majority of Americans, the nakedness is a bit of a deal breaker.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
I don't want everybody going to the sauna anyway. Get too crowded.
You shouldn't have written books about it then.
I know. I was youthful and filled with the promise of life. I don't know.
So could you tell us a little bit about, because you published a few different books, you could tell us maybe what those books are, give us just kind of a little summary of what each one was, and then tell us about Otsa Press, because that's how we met, was through this thing called Otsa Press.
Okay, so I was working at a Finnish language camp, and then another Finnish young man was there, and we both liked poetry, so we got this idea, hey, well, if you like to write and read, you often think, oh, I'm going to write a book when I grow up, or I'm going to write a book right now.
Yeah.
So then it was at that time in my life, I thought, you know what, okay, and then we egged each other on, so we picked a category, and we'd each write a poem about it, and then we published the book. Well, that's a lot more work than you think, because who wants to publish a book of poetry? Nobody. So we had to scrape up money by ourselves, and then there was a Finnish man that would print your book and set it up for you, and he did that for us, and it cost us an arm and a leg, and I don't think I
Wow.
ever made a penny off of that, but it was fun. Well, then from there I thought, well, who needs this guy? I'll just print my own book.
There you go.
So then I wrote the book about the sauna that you had a quote from on one of your shows.
Yeah.
And that was all a romantic, with my children. And it was supposed to be set in the winter because there's such a heat and cold difference, but it ended up being in summer, which is nice because the illustrator I had, who was a Finnish American illustrator who I worked with on the Finnish American Reporter, a monthly Finnish American newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
She thought that was fun, so she went up to the UP to her grandparents' sauna and did all the illustrations, and then we combined the stories, and I published that myself. So that cost an arm and a leg, and I said, "Oh, I did it! I made it big in the world. I'm going to be famous." I don't want to be famous at all. That's too much baggage to be famous. So if you think you want to be famous, maybe you better think about it a little bit. And
Words of wisdom.
then I thought, well, I made enough so I could maybe publish another one. So I thought, oh, I know. I'll talk to all my Finnish friends, and you have to give me something. And the theme is the sauna. I don't care what it is. So it was an anthology. So I had another short story that I had written. So I put that in there. And then everybody was giving me different things. And we just piled it all in there. And some I didn't like, and some I liked. But then most people liked that book. That was called Oh Finland. That's out of print a long time ago now.
We have a couple of
Oh,
those.
maybe if you put them on eBay, I saw one going for a lot more than it should be going.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to get rid of it though.
Oh, okay. And then I put one more anthology after that, and then I had my fill of being a famous author.
I'm done being famous.
I'm done being famous. Just in case you got mixed up by David Salmela, there's the famous architect. He's really smart and he's really talented, and he's put out some books too. David Salmela, I hope you're listening. I really admire you. You've really done well in this world, and architecture will not be the same since you came along.
Well, and maybe one of these days we'll talk to the other David Salmela, because we did go visit him a few years later. So hopefully he'll show up in a podcast episode.
Tell him I'm a little bit sorry about one thing. Yeah, we were living in a basement apartment, totally broken. This guy called me and said, David Salmela? I said, yes. He said, what should I do with that stock? I said, sell it. So if he went for that, I either made you a lot of money or I lost you a pile. I'm so sorry, or you're welcome. You take your pick. Phew, am I glad to get that off my chest. I feel so much better now.
It's like you got to confession.
Ah. Whew. All right.
And
Next question.
I think I even heard of a third David Salmela. Do you know the third one?
And he does. I had to make money, so I would ref basketball games. So she would work all night, then she'd get up and I'd go ref a basketball game, and she'd stay with the kids. Except one day she got a telephone call from a hospital and says, are you David Salmela's wife?
Oh my goodness.
She said, yeah. He's been in a bicycle accident. And what did you say then?
It didn't seem right to me because he was out reffing.
So then they said, is he balding and have a beard and glasses?
Oh,
yeah.
You better come down and see. So it wasn't too far. It was just down Highway 7. But she went and she got in. They finally let her into the emergency room and described that next part. I kind of like that part because she loves me.
Well, then when I went in and I saw this guy laying there, and it's like I saw neon lights flashing and it said short. Oh, because it wasn't David. He was way too short to be David, even when he was laying down. So I was happy it wasn't him.
Right?
Yeah.
So then I got home.
Goodness.
I got home from reffing. I opened the door and I said, hi, what are you? And she belted me right in the gut. I'm so mad at you. I said I didn't do anything. Oh.
You, David Salmelas, you intertwine quite a bit in unexpected ways. I think there's something going on, like parallel universes, and there was something that happened with the David Salmelas.
That didn't have anything to do with the sauna.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's wild.
What would you say are some precious sauna memories that you've had over the years? Some that stand out to you?
There's so many. They kind of, like the saunas, roll by my face.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. I mean, just like Christmases maybe, or grandparents, cousins, dead people now, our own children who are grown. And now going last sauna with my dad. And then the fun ones are just horsing around with the people your age, goofing off, singing old Finnish songs that you don't even know what you're talking about. And just having fun. And then, of course, jumping in the lakes and ponds and water barrels and snow and, all of that. And just being quiet. I mean, they just can go. Yeah. So no, nothing specific.
Did you ever sauna by yourself?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Hmm.
I'm my best company. Oh,
How are you not laughing all the time?
Because I hear this all the time.
So, because we've talked about like the dynamic between like social saunaers and then more solitary saunaers, and like I'm much more of a social. I enjoy meeting new people, introducing them to sauna, being in there and experiencing it together. But Julie's more on the solitary side, where she just loves if she has a bunch of hours where she can just go and enjoy the sauna round after round and have some peace and quiet. Um, how about you, Annie? How are you? Do you prefer the more social sauna experience, or do you like the quiet, more solitary?
I would say more quiet and solitary. I mean, I remember going when I was a child, like I said, with my mother, my grandmother, and cousins and aunts. But now I haven't done sauna for a long time because we don't have one. And my hair gets kinky.
And that's annoying.
It's very annoying. It does. It goes.
Ooh. Oh, ouch. Oh,
Yeah, usually I'm the more extrovert of the two of us. But when it comes to sauna, we've switched. Like he's the one that's like meeting new people, inviting people over all the time. And I'm just like, even as a family, we'll sauna and then everybody will be done and I'll just do one or two by myself. 1 or 2 rounds by myself. So
Well, and I think as an introvert, or maybe I just speak for myself and not all introverts, but there's something nice about sauna. Like it's safe, it's a small space, you know, swimsuit or no clothes, and then you know what's going on. You chat, you steam. It's once you get out into the like the broader social context where it's like, oh, I'm at dinner with someone. What do I talk about? What do I do? Like sauna is just more easy to navigate.
yeah, because if you don't want to talk, you just don't.
you just pour more water on the
Yeah,
rocks.
if someone's going blabbing on it. That's why you were throwing so much water on. I get it now. By the way, this is a nice Finnish cup I'm drinking out of. It really tastes good on here, this coffee.
Christopher got me that set for my birthday several years ago, but it's
Very nice.
yeah. I love it.
And then unfortunately, sometimes when I talk about Finnish things, my brogue will thicken up from the childhood and I don't even know it. So I'm struggling to control that sometimes. I just heard it come out there somewhere.
That's
Did you hear it? Did anyone hear it, or was that just in my head?
I don't think I
I
caught
think
it.
a little bit.
Oh,
You did? You heard
yeah.
it? Yeah. And that's just because that's how I grew up hearing a thick Finnish brogue. So I thought that's how everybody talked. I couldn't even spell my last name. 7 years old. That's ridiculous.
Who needs to spell their last name at 7 years old? No one.
Next question.
Did you guys already talk about the kids' book? Is it a kids' book?
Yes, but it's pretty deep for a kid's book.
Yeah. Well, good kids' books should be deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not all cartoony.
Oh, and here's one interesting thing about that book. I decided I'm going to have a black cover. Nobody in publishing had black covers at that time. So, of course, I said, well, I'm having one. So I did. Just, I don't know why that, I mean, oh, and one of my favorite quotes is one of my friends read one of my stories and said, you wrote this? Oh, I guess it's okay. So I put that on the back of my book. And another one said, could be better. And so I thought, okay, I'm not winning here. So I went to a school coworker who was not Finnish at all, and he read one of my stories. And here's what this guy said. He said, and this is an educated man. He said, some of these stories are better than the others.
That's probably true.
I know, but then I thought, you know what? I'm going to use all of those because on all it is but spectacular use of words, wonderful stories. This will touch your heart. It's like, forget it. It could be better.
Well, I really love your children's book. And there's not many sauna related books that are like for children. I know of 2. But it like captures the essence of sauna, and we'll show a little bit as we do this episode. I'll show you a few pages for the viewers of the podcast. And then any of the listeners will try and put a little bit up on our social media. And it's difficult to track down, so sorry. But
yeah, I'm done with that thing.
yeah.
So if you've got a copy, sell it for $500.
But we've given
And I
away
will be famous.
We've given away a few copies. That and The Opposite of Cold are a couple that we love to give away because we feel like they really, they just have a lot of texture to them. They're
Yeah.
really
Well,
nice.
thank you. That's kind of you.
I remember the first time that Christopher talked about you, he stumbled upon your book and he was like, I think I can get a hold of this guy. So I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So I went and did, like whatever, my mom thing. I don't know what I was doing. And then Christopher, I think you were up at your office or something, and you were like on the phone for like, I don't even know how long.
How
like,
long, Annie?
I don't know, like an
Long
hour.
time.
It was like maybe hours. I don't even know. But I think at one point I came up and like you were still on the phone.
Why did you talk so much, Christopher? I was trying to go to bed.
Eventually you guys, wrapped it up or whatever. But then I think there was our correspondence continued. And then at some point, I don't think we invited ourselves, but I think you invited us.
I don't remember. I don't see why I wouldn't have.
It could have gone either way. We could have invited. Maybe if we spoke in person, I could get more sauna knowledge.
Yeah, you're talking to the right guy. I almost choked to death on some Cambodian soup.
And I'm trying to remember in our course, because I'm this is going back a few years. Was David the first just random stranger Finn that we met in person?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you kind of kicked off that opening the door to we're just gonna meet Finns from that we've just met on the internet or something.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm famous. I finally made it.
Yeah.
Every time my ship has come in, it's been a garbage scow filled with garbage, ready to be dumped in the ocean. And now it's like this luxury liner just coming in with solar power and just settling on the pier. Thank you.
Yeah,
I made it.
All 50 listeners.
Yeah.
Great, you didn't tell me that.
So then we went to your house. You took us and our kids to a park. And then you fed us some dinner. And what do you guys remember about that dinner?
I remember pink cake and Spam, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. First time I had ever had Spam.
Huh. Well, we're kind of hoity-toity that way.
One thing that I wanted to really share with the two of you was when I think it was during dinner, after dinner at some point, we had shared that we were kind of in a rough place in our marriage, and sauna kind of helped bring us back together. And so I had told you that I had kind of written this piece called How Sauna Saved Our Marriage. And I remember, Annie, I said that, and you said, and next time it'll be something else. And for me, at that time in my life, we'd been married for 10 years. We were kind of in a rough place, and we were coming out of that rough place. And then here I was having dinner with a couple who'd been married for decades. And basically you said to me, there will be a next time. There will be another difficult time, but there'll be something else that will bring you two back together. And that is something that has stuck with me. And it will, and I tell people all the time this story, and then it was this lady, I'll say Andy, sometimes I say Andy, sometimes I just tell the story, and I'll be like, and she said, next time it'll be something else. And it was just such a good reminder to me at that time to be like, it doesn't end here. It will keep going. But to look at the two of you and to see the love and the laughter that you have together, and to know you went through that. There were things that saved your marriage, what I quote unquote saved. That's really why I wanted you to come, was because I wanted to let you know, that meant so much to me as a young mom and a young wife, and that that simple phrase was so meaningful to me at that time in my life and still holds so much meaning for
Oh,
me.
that's nice. Thank you.
And what did you think of just a bunch of random strangers from Rochester coming over to your house?
It was different, but then again, that's David. He just would have random people over, and it was fun. We had a good time.
Yeah, I figured Annie would get over it. I hoped anyway, but it wasn't that big a deal because I don't know. I'd lived with a lot of different people, and Finnish community, you go visiting all the time. So it's really not that big of a deal to go visiting. And someone will come to your house, and you might not want them there, but you just put on your polite face. And then after they're gone, you think, well, that was kind of fun. I mean, I don't know.
Spoken like a true introvert, I feel like.
Yes, I'm so introverted.
Oh, reminds me of that joke. So you told us a joke.
I did.
I think so.
I'm gonna
I
be
think
so
it was you.
embarrassed.
No, it was a funny joke. It was about how do you know a Finn?
An extroverted
Oh.
Finn?
Yeah. I'm going to totally butcher it. You tell
I
it.
learned that from other Finns, and it's really kind of true. And it probably goes for other ethnicities
Sure,
as well.
sure.
But you can tell an extroverted Finn because they look at your feet and not their own.
So that was the joke. I thought that was pretty funny too. And so we were like, oh, I think David is an extroverted Finn.
Yeah, it might have been normal for you guys to have sauna and social situations like you talked about, but for us from the outside, that wasn't always so normal.
Mhm.
So, we've run into Finns who are very happy to share about sauna. You bring up the word and they're like, oh, we love it. And then others, we've run into a few who are like, why are you asking about that?
Mhm.
And it's a little bit more closed off, which just makes it more of a challenge to find out about it.
Well, I hereby, by the powers vested in me, authorize you to be as knowledgeable about saunas as any other person. Hear, hear.
Awesome. I'll take it.
You got it.
Got it. So our conversation was kind of a little bit meandering today, but go back again and tell us what made you go into self-publishing.
Mostly I did self-publishing because I signed up for one of those write a children's book in a magazine that you pay someone and then the editor will edit it. And they gave me some good ideas. But then I always heard, write what you know, write what you know. That's a good place to start in anything you do if you're going to be a writer. And also I've read some famous authors say, swimmers swim, anglers go fishing, mechanics work on mechanical things, writers write. It's really hard to write if you don't write. And the more you write, the better you get at it. I also did a little stint for 1 year writing a monthly column for the Finnish American Reporter. That's where I met contacts for actually doing a book and getting it out there. But it's always been a little fun to be different than everybody else without being mean. So it's like, all right, I'm going to be my own publisher. I'm not a very good editor. I really have troubles with that. But I managed to get through the publishing process. I did the marketing. I did the sales. I made it what I found later was to be a decent run of books for even a larger publishing company. I think I sold 3,000 of the Sauna. That's not huge, but
Significant.
after about 15 years, I finally made a profit selling them a book at a time. So I had my dreams lifted. I got the book done and I had them crushed. There was this one, I went to a Fin Fest in the UP and I bought a stall. So that cost money, and to drive up there and hauling my mom with me and having the first day with my book. I was so excited. I think I had two books at the time. And I was standing there in this old Finn waiting for his wife. He's reading my book and reading it. And I was like, oh, yes, it's going to be my first sale of the day. And then because you have to sell when you sell or sell, I said, well, how many can I get for you? He says, oh, I've already read it. He handed it back to me. And I didn't make any sales all day. I went home and cried like a baby. But then the next day was a little better because I loosened. Once you make the first sale, then it seems like it comes in waves. But that was almost like I wanted to punch him. But that was really a Finnish thing to do. So I think he was just horsing around with me. But so I use that one once in a while if there's some really good hopeful. But I buy their book after I'm done. I just read it, and then they say, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Well, that was good." Were you going to buy one? No, I already read it. But then I buy it because I don't want him to go home and cry.
Well, and I would definitely recommend that all of our listeners try and track down your books. So keep an eye out for them. And, your book of like the compilation of poems and stories and everything, most of the conversation online is about how tall to make the room, how hot to make the room, which heater do you buy? Are you in there for 15 minutes? What are the health effects? Very
Really?
like technical. Yep, very
Really?
technical.
Yeah.
But I feel like, your book and the Sweating with the Finns book, those stories, that's really the interesting part of sauna. That's really how Americans should educate themselves about sauna, is learning about the culture that it comes from.
Wow. I guess I was probably raised in subsistence saunas then, because I've had them in the back of a garage, old chicken coop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And then, some frame built ones
Mhm.
and log built ones, and one time I tried to make my own sauna when I was camping. I heated up some stones and I put a teepee like structure, like, maybe a sweat lodge. But I just had some plastic and it was kind of cold and I didn't get the stones hot enough, and my two friends didn't come in with me. And I was pretending that the steam was coming off the frozen cold rocks, and then they said, "Now you got to jump in the lake," and it was so cold I almost died, and we're in the middle of nowhere. So I've been in all kinds of saunas.
So as you
Oh,
can
and I
hear,
didn't even have any clothes on.
oh,
Water is really cold if you don't have any clothes on, and your sauna didn't even work.
so David's a great storyteller. So I especially just enjoy your writing because it's so funny, it's so real and so descriptive. And when we email back and forth, like Christopher and I, we really get a kick out of your emails. Like when we get an email from you, it's like, it's so funny. It just makes us laugh. I mean, you're just such a great writer and we love it.
I'll tell you what. Why don't you just? You're welcome, but why don't you just say it could be better? I'm getting a little ishy feeling here.
It could be better.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, David, Annie, you guys, we really appreciate you coming down out of your busy life, coming down here, taking sauna, sitting inside my home, eating our food, trying new things, and then taking your time to do this with us. We really appreciate it.
Well, and we thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us over
Yeah.
and feeding
Lots
us
of fun.
and a nice sauna and wonderful family. And I thank the family as well. Thank you very much. We had some poetry and we had some sauna and we had some good food and coffee.
An all around
Could be a little
wonderful day.
better.
It could be. And thanks to our listeners for joining us today as we talked with David and his lovely wife, Annie. It is truly a privilege to have you here with us, so thanks for being here. Next week, we're back on the sauna trail and visiting some unique saunas as a whole family again. If you haven't yet, join our locals community and say hi. It's free to sign up. You'll get regular updates from us. If you enjoy our content and would like to support this podcast, Locals has that option as well. The address is thesaunatrail.locals.com. We appreciate all of our supporters and fellow sauna hounds. Our podcast can be found on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and other streaming platforms, as well as our website, thesaunatrail.com. New episodes release Saturdays, which is the traditional Finnish day for sauna, also called Sauna Paiva. We hope to see you on the sauna trail.